Well, good morning and welcome to Daily Devotions of Pastor Chris, episode 283. Here we are, the day after Christmas. Good morning, Tom. Good to see you on this morning, this Saturday morning. God bless all of you and welcome. It is good to be with you, and I pray that you had a wonderful and blessed Christmas. Man, it was a different Christmas Day, obviously with the pandemic, but and our I know for us, typically we have our entire family there. That's nearly 25 of us that get together and just cram into a house and eating merriment and all that all day. And it did not look like that at all, but it was still wonderful, and because Christ was the center of everything. The weather was not, it was just weird. It was gray and gloomy and rainy and warm. I mean, I had a fire in the fireplace all day, but it was so hot outside that we had the windows open, so it was more of an aesthetic than anything. So, but in any case, had a wonderful Christmas, and just enjoyed every minute of it. So I pray that you did as well. It's good to see some of you on here this morning. I've already said hello to Tom. Good to see you, Karen. My dad is on with us this morning. Oh man, I never, hello there. Oh, hello there. Oh man, let's see here. I'm sorry. You know what? I do this all the time, and I've got to stop. My Instagram just keeps keep getting slided here. So give me just a second, guys. The problem is I've got too many accounts, and I need to just make one. But okay, here we go. And live. So sorry about that, guys. All right. Hello there, Instagram. Sorry that I was late getting you on this morning. So as I was saying, I was just saying hello to Karen and Tom and my dad and Elizabeth and Carlene and Jean and Timothy and Melissa and Joe and Ann McFadden and Lenny Pace and Karen Archambault. And now K-Pick is on with us, and others are jumping on. So I was just wishing everybody a very Merry Christmas, and hope that you had a wonderful time. Guys, we have a number of people in our sphere, and we all know people, but we have a number of people that are struggling this year directly with COVID, people that are in the hospital, some fighting for their lives. And so we want to just continue to lift those people up in prayer. My grandmother is in her 90s, and she beat COVID, but now what do you call it? Pancreatic cancer is knocking on her door, and so she's not doing well. And so I just pray that you continue to lift her up in prayer, and most of all, that she just really connects with Jesus. She knows the Lord, she loves the Lord, but that she senses His peace during all of this time that she's going through. Donato, good to see you. Good to see you, Seymour Mom. Nice to have you on. And Deb Click just jumped on. So, but I want to share something with you guys this morning. What's up, William? Dude, you're like a superhero to me. It's good to see you guys all. And now we are past Christmas, and we're about to round the horn of the last full week of 2020. Can you believe it? 2020, the big 2020 is almost over. What's up, Rose? Good to see you on today. And at the beginning of this year, we did not have any ability to forecast this super bug that was going to come across our shores. There was no way. Everybody was talking about the perfect vision, the clear vision, 2020, and we didn't know that throughout 2020 we would be negotiating around a global pandemic that would literally affect everything that we have known as normal. Things as simple as going to church and going to the supermarket and 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 just leaving our homes has all been tainted and altered in some way. But what we did know was that God gave us a very clear vision for 2020. And if you remember that every year, the Lord, I start praying early in or late September, early October. I start asking the Lord, what direction does He want us to go for the year to come? And by the way, God's given me a theme for 2021. I'm really excited about, and we'll be sharing that probably in the second week of January. Um, but God gave us a theme for 2020, and that theme had nothing to do with vision. I was very clear. It wasn't that I'm trying to be boastful or prideful. I'm just saying that God knew. God knew that we didn't need to jump on that train because nobody had the vision for what was happening. There was a few prophetic people out there that were saying something big is coming down the pike, but I don't know any church denominational leader that was saying, guys, brace yourselves because 2020 is going to be horrible. We were economy was good, people were happy, things were, unemployment was down. There was just things were just humming along at the opening of 2020, and we didn't see what this was going to do to us. But the word that God gave for our church was the simple statement, with all. With all. And this is considered to be Jesus' greatest commandment in all the Bible. When he was asked, what is the greatest command in all the Bible? Jesus, without hesitation, said, he quoted a prayer from the book of Deuteronomy, the Shema prayer, but his quote was in Mark chapter 12, verse 30. And he said without hesitation that the greatest commandment in all the Bible was to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And so the issue that many of us deal with is, okay, I can love God with all, but how do I do that? How do I truly love? How do I show love, and how do I do it with all? What does that even? It's because words are empty. We know that words are fleeting. People can say whatever they want to say, and they can try to make you feel however they want to make you feel, and people can be very manipulative and parse words but how do you actually engage in the action of loving with all? Yesterday was Christmas. And what's up, Michelle Pango? Good to see you. Elizabeth Hibbert is on with us. Rocco's back on with us. God bless you. God bless all of you guys joining on today. And so yesterday was Christmas, and we were all sitting around our trees and enjoying each other and exchanging gifts, perhaps. And maybe you did that on Christmas Eve. But the point was, the last couple of days, we celebrated in some form the Christmas season. And for one thing that I've learned is every year that I get older, I learned that Acts chapter 20 verse 35 is so true, that it truly is better to give than to receive. I mean, we go around in our family, we go around one at a time, and we open up gifts and watch each other, and it takes an extraordinary amount of time, not because we have a ton of gifts, but because we all so enjoy watching the other person open up an expression of love from us. And my kids are getting to the age where they're purchasing gifts for our family with their own money, and so they're putting a lot of thought into that. And so I actually have one of my gifts with me. This is, where's it at? This is my daughter wrapped this up into a nice package, and it was just a piece of paper with a really, really nice letter on it that she wrote to me. And I won't go into those details because it was personal, but at the end of the day, this is her wanting to take me out on a date. And so we're going to do that, and it's just so special because it's something that I've been doing for her ever since she was old enough to understand the boys, and so we've been having these, fairly regular, and now she wants to reciprocate that and show me. And so just a beautiful expression, but it takes this time. And what we've learned is that, man, it's better to give than it is to even receive. And listen, we enjoy getting a few things from time to time. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing sinful about that. That's certainly, the joy comes out of that. But the joy that you receive when you know that you have sacrificed, and that sacrifice has become a blessing to somebody else, in turn provides a reciprocating satisfaction or joy that money cannot buy. And it really isn't about the amount of money that gift costs, but it truly is the heart of the issue, like the heart of Christmas. And so then comes the issue, though, of what do you do then when you don't know what to get, right? Like, I know that I'm going to have to buy a present for my wife. What do you do when you got a blank slate? And I got to be honest with you, for Jeanette this year, it was particularly difficult because I knew that it was going to be hard for her to get me anything, because the truth was that there wasn't really anything that I desperately needed or even really wanted that was less than like $30,000. So, it's like, and so for me, and the practical side of me, I'm like, listen, we got two girls in college. I'd rather just not spend the money and make sure that we have enough to get them, where they need to go, and that they're adequately provided for. We don't pay for our kids' school. Our kids pay for their school. They work their way through college. That's what Jeanette and I did, the same thing. And so we just feel like that's the way we've structured it. But we try to help them where we can. So my thought was, well, listen, I'm not in any real desperate need. I mean, I don't even need underwear and socks. I mean, I'm adequately supplied for. So why not just not get gifts? And for me, and we'll just, whatever monies we would have used, we'll just help the girls. And of course, that's just not going to fly. My wife's not going to show up to Christmas out nothing, right? But for many people, we're faced with that scenario. And a lot of times people's method of operation is, well, if I don't know what to buy, then I'm just going to buy a whole bunch of stuff, throw it all up against the wall, and hope that something sticks, hope that something rings the bell. And then that's becomes wasteful and trite, because then it's just about hoping that you ring the bell. But to be faced with a situation where you have to produce something, but you don't have any direction on what to produce, or even a metric to gauge the success or the failure of that decision, it can be overwhelming. It can be frustrating, and honestly, a little deflating. And it may not come as a surprise to you, but Jeanette did do extremely well for me. She had nothing to go on, and I knew that. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I just knew it was difficult. And I kept apologizing. I'm like, honey, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I really wish I could tell you this is the thing. But she did so well. And it's not because the gifts that I got were expensive. They weren't. And it's not because they were extravagant. They weren't. But what they were was, the gifts that she gave me were a clear indicator of how well she knows me. And it was a reminder to me of the closeness of our relationship. And it ignited a love that only comes from two hearts being one. Now today isn't about a love story between me and Jeanette, and just using that as an illustration because it's very fresh in my own personal life. But what I would rather do is, what I want us to do is be reminded as why loving Jesus with all of your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength, why that is so important. And that we not confuse the worldly misconception of love and commitment with that of with the spiritual principles, because they're very, very different. Jesus' only desire is that you love him with all. with all. He's not looking for expensive. He's not looking for extravagant. He's looking for your heart. And that is the heart of Christmas. So when you show love to him and when you show love to others, you are loving him with all. And the truth is that no amount of activity for God will ever take place of a heart that is right with him. Through the ages, people have tried to persuade God, and they've tried to convince God, or even convince themselves that they could please God through their service, through their offerings, regardless of their heart condition. That as long as I serve and as long as I give, it doesn't matter where my heart is. As long as I serve, as long as I give. You know, King Saul offered. The Bible tells us in 1 Samuel that King Saul offered generous sacrifices, hoping that God would overlook his disobedience. If you look in 1 Samuel chapter 15 and verse 22, it says this. It says, Samuel said, so Samuel's the prophet, and he's talking to about Saul. He says, does the Lord have as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than a sacrifice, and to pay attention is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is a reprehensible as sin of divination. Do you hear that? This is where we hear people say that rebellion is as of the sin of witchcraft. It comes from this passage when Samuel was rebuking Saul, because Saul thought, well, as long as I give extravagant offerings and as long as I stay in his service, then he will overlook all my evil. And that's in the problem was that Saul had a rebellious heart. He had a prideful, rebellious heart. And Samuel says, look, Saul, Samuel didn't have a rebellious heart. Saul had a rebellious heart. And so Samuel, the prophet, says to Saul, the king, this is reprehensible. And it says the sin of divination or of witchcraft. Its insubordination is as reprehensible as false religion and idolatry. Since you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you from being king. I mean, this is bad stuff. And so anyway, Saul was just lavishing extravagant offerings and services to the Lord, but it meant nothing because his heart wasn't with him with all. David did the same thing. King David he assumed that after all that he had done for God, you know, if you've ever heard somebody say, after all I've done for God, then you know right there that their hearts are not right. Because we cannot do enough. That's what the Pharisees did. The Pharisees were always displaying all that they did for God, all that I give, all that I do, all the places I go, all the people I touch, all this, all that. And that's what David did, the same thing. He felt like that after all that he had done on God's behalf, that God would overlook his sin. And the prophet Nathan came to him, which, you know, we talked about how Mary came through the line of Nathan. But 2 Samuel chapter 12 and verse 7 says, Nathan then said to David, you yourself are the man. This is what the Lord. Remember, he gave him this scenario, and he said, what would you do if this scenario happened? And David was like, that man should die. And Nathan says, you're this man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Is it not I who anointed you king over Israel? And it is I who rescued from the land in the hand of Saul. I also gave you your master's house and put your master's wife into your care. And I gave you the house of Israel and Judah. And if that had been too little, I would have added to you many more things like these. Why have you despised the word of the Lord by doing evil in his sight? You have struck and killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword and taken his wife. This is when he cheated. Remember, this is when he took Bathsheba and he impregnated Bathsheba, and he should have been out at war. And Bathsheba's husband Uriah was at war, and so he had him killed, trying to cover up the whole thing. And so anyway, it goes on and on and on. But the point is this: is that David tried to convince Nathan, look, I've done so much for God. I have sacrificed and I have given and I've spilled blood and I'm committed to God. Surely he'll overlook this. And God is like, I'm not tolerating a heart that's not hungry after me. It happened again with Ananias and Sapphira. And when they thought that their generous offerings to the church would compensate for their deceitfulness. And in Acts chapter 5, verses 1 through 11, we see that he says, have you not lied? That, remember, Ananias and Sapphira sold some land, and they kept a little bit of the money for themselves, and they gave the rest to the church. And when they were asked, is this all that you made from the land? They said, yes, this is all. And they kept some back. And so they said, in verse 4, it says, you have not lied to men, but to God. And as he heard these words, Ananias collapsed and died, and great fear came over all who heard about it. And the young men got up and covered him, and after carrying him out, they buried him. And then 3 hours later, Sapphira comes in, his wife, and they ask her the same thing, and the same thing happens to her. And so anyway, the point is they thought that they must have some closeness and like, God's got my back because look at all I give to God, and we gave all this money, and we give all this land, and we give all this, and so God's got me. And the truth is that God wanted them to have the heart of the widow who gave the widow's mites. Remember, like, she gave all that she had, and so here they sell off this land and they give a generous sacrifice, but God wanted all their heart. Paul was certainly, you remember the Apostle Paul, this dude was one that he had tremendously zealous service toward God. Well, he was a zealous person anyway. And I find it interesting that this guy who was so charismatic, so outward, so extroverted, so in the face of the people, such a high profile person. I mean, when Paul walks into a room, everybody knows it. And when he writes the love chapter, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the chapter on love, it gives us the full biblical definition of love. And in the love chapter, before he goes into all the description of what true love is, he tells us what true love is not. And he says in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1, he says, after his conversation, however, he concluded that even if he had the faith, listen to this, if he had all the faith to remove a mountain, and if he gave all of his riches to the poor, and if he offered his physical body to be burned at the stake for God, and he did not have a heart that was right with God, it would be for nothing. And then he goes into what love is. Love is patient, it's kind, it's forgiving, it's long-suffering, it does not, and does not this and does not that. And so we're susceptible, guys, to the same misunderstanding as all of these people were. We can be so deceived into assuming that God is more interested in our activity for him than he is in the condition of our hearts. God wants us to love him with all, with everything that's in us. And I got to tell you, as we're ending this year, understand that as a theme of a year ends, that doesn't mean that the principles of that theme end. We've been sitting on this all year and marinating on with all year, so that as we move into 2021 with a new theme, that you're still loving with all, because you cannot go to the next level unless you've got this one right. And so this is why we've been on a trajectory that's been very calculated by the Holy Spirit for our church for the past several years. And he's been conditioning us and preparing us for greater, bigger, higher, deeper, not because he wants us to be great, but because he wants to be made great in us. God has constantly made it clear that he is not being pacified or even by the most generous offerings or the most zealous service if our hearts are not right with him. Micah said this, the prophet Micah in chapter 6, he says, with what shall I come to the Lord and bow myself before the God on high? Shall I come to him with burnt offerings or with yearling calves? Does the Lord take pleasure in thousands of rams or 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give him my firstborn for all my wrongdoings, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, mortal one, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. So, guys, no matter what, or no matter how much we do in God's service, regardless of how active we are in church or how honorable our reputation in the Christian community, He will not overlook a sinful heart. And His desire is that we devote ourselves to Him and love Him with all our hearts. And that is the true heart of Christmas. And so I pray that that has challenged you in some way and blessed you, and that it encourages you to strive forward, to love God, to put God in front of every decision, every emotion, every feeling, every disappointment, every struggle, every victory, every success, every joy-filled moment. That no matter what, that all of your heart and your heart and your mind are run through the filter of loving Jesus with all. And if we will do that, then we will keep our hearts set firmly upon Him, and we will not misstep, at least as easily. All right? So that's it for today. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for being part of Daily Devotions with Pastor Chris this Saturday morning. I pray that you're blessed, and I pray that you have an amazing weekend. And I'll see you at church tomorrow, but I'll also be on for a quick review of Revelation, last part of 11 and into 12. So I will see you tomorrow. God bless.